All right, so to give a little bit of background about me, I am not from Texas. I am from the Midwest. I grew up in small churches between 10 and 15 people, sometimes up to 150. I heard about the AIM program when I was a sophomore in high school. The Sunset grad who I met at my Bible camp, it was here, and I said, hey, you probably don't remember me, but 11 years ago you told me about the AIM program. I didn't know about it. I was praying about it. I met him. I met Speedy Hart. They recruited me for the program, and I came. I lived in Nebraska, South Dakota, Arizona, and then I ended up in Texas. The AIM program was a huge pivotal point in my life. I'm going to try not to cry today. I'm looking at Barb, and I'm like, It was a huge pivotal point in my life. I had been through a lot just in my family and in my home in those 2 years between the time I heard about AIM and when I came. And when I first came to AIM, I felt tremendously unworthy to be there. I thought, man, I'm not the one for this. I had no intention of becoming a missionary. I came to AIM because I wanted to know the Bible for myself, and I knew the risk of losing your faith in university. I know that a lot of people lose their faith in university. And I thought, I still want to go be a science researcher or a band director or a music therapist, but I'm going to go to this program first, know the Bible for myself, and then, go to school. But then I got hooked. I came to AIM. I saw people love and care for each other in a way that was very, very tender, more tender and gentle than I had seen in a lot of my life. And it really affirmed the transformative part of Christianity that I was wondering, is it really there? Does it really change people? And when I came to the AIM program and I saw the families and how they treated each other and even the parents of these ones in the back and how they cared for me as if I was one of their own, it was so healing for me. And it gave me there you are. And it gave me the motivation to want to help other people find that kind of healing. So when I heard about Estonia, a country that has had a lot of hurt because of religion, being ruled by Catholic Sweden, being ruled by Lutheran Germany, being victims of the Crusades from Saxima, as they say, what we now call Germany, they had been through a lot. They'd been through a lot. During the Soviet Union, there was 50 years in which religion was not necessarily legal, but heavily discouraged in multiple forms, including occasionally brute force. So it kind of faded into irrelevance. And then you only have one generation since the Soviet Union. A lot of other countries you might talk about that are very receptive, they've had hundreds of years of missionaries, hundreds of years of people that have come and shared the gospel. But Estonia, since the Soviet Union, has had one. And so we'll be talking today a little bit about our not only present goals and dreams for Estonia, but how we've learned to think generationally. And so let's talk about where Estonia is. I won't make you play the game, Where is Estonia? I'll show you. So this is Europe. That big arrow I put in there to show you Estonia, because it is. It's a small country. It's about the size of Maine. It's 1.2 million. It's almost 1.3 now with the Ukrainian refugees. You can see that there are 3 countries between Estonia and Ukraine. So we've got Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus, and Ukraine. So we're not bordering. We're not bordering there. But just to give you some perspective of where we are, very much a Nordic, Scandinavian, Baltic country, kind of identifies as all 3. And that's where we're at. But I was going through the missions track. I had no intention of going to Estonia. I didn't know. I'd never heard of it except in Encino Man, if you know that movie. Found out it was a real place. And the guys that wanted to go there, I thought, I could work with these guys. They respect me and they're kind to me, and we can, kind of look out for each other as single people on the mission field. Of course, now they're both married off, so, it's great. But yeah, so there's Estonia, and you can understand a little bit from the history of having so many different rulers, some good, some not so good, sometimes Vikings taking over, lots of different things happening there. And so because of their history, they don't have this familiarity with Christianity. Something that I've been thinking about a lot, and it'll be 4 years in April that I've been serving in Estonia, is when we look at something that grows, When we look at a plant, I would imagine that many of you in here garden. Can you tell me what the most important part of the growth process is? You can answer. What would you say is the most important part of the growth process? Water, planting. Seed gets established, roots, yeah. What was that? Sunshine? Right. The life in the plant? The germination of the seed? Yeah. You'll notice none of these answers are the same. Almost none of them are the same. And something that I've been learning recently is that sometimes we overvalue one part of the growth process over another. And we think sprouts are the most important part of the growth process. And if you don't have enough sprouts coming up, you're not gardening right. Or if you don't have enough adult plants, you're not gardening right. But I've been learning what I believe is that God values every part of the growth process. He values those who are just sprouting out of the ground, those who have just been planted, those who are now producing their own seeds, their own fruit, maybe for the first time, those who have withered, but then they've been watered and they've come back to life. There's so many different growth stages in the process. And I used to think, I'm not a good missionary unless I have so many sprouts. I'm not a good missionary unless I have so many adult plants. And that's something that I've been learning to value. This is a bit smaller than I thought it was, but I'm just going to read this. I planted the seed, Apollos watered it, but God has made it grow. So neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything, but only God who makes things grow. The one who plants and the one who waters have one purpose. They will each be rewarded according to their own labor, for we are co-workers in God's service. We are God's building. Some days I water. Some days I plant. Some days I'm watering adult plants that are withered. And in my ministry, I'm trying to balance both. I know a lot of missionaries and a lot of people either only work in church work or they only work with people outside of church. I visited some missionaries in Greece who only do outside of church work with refugees, but they didn't have a church. They weren't planting one. And I know some people only work with people who are already Christians, who are already believers. And I've seen the value of doing both, that we're not just trying to maintain the church. And what I've perceived is this fear that if we don't constantly pull all of our energy into the church will die. And then, we sometimes forget to do outreach. And how do we even do that, right? So what I've been learning is to balance both in a way that's natural. Okay, so now you're going to see a bunch of cool pictures. About kind of before and after and where things started and where things are in Estonia in the last few years. We are very fortunate today to have with us the founder of the camp in these pictures, Roy Sarton there in the back. He started this camp over 27 years ago. I think it's 28 years now, something like that. And now the kids who weren't even born, all of these kids are younger than 27, except one. So all of these kids weren't even born. And now they are leading the camp. They're planning this camp. And so this is our camp staff there. And the director was 8 years old when the camp started. And so to see that growth. Now what you need to understand about this camp is that majority of the kids there don't speak English. So my very first experience in Estonia, as some of you know, is showing up the second day to this camp, having not slept for 30 hours, having never experienced jet lag before, expected to be a fully functioning counselor to 5 Russian-speaking teenage girls. I begged the director, I'm not ready for this, I can't do this. And she's like, you're here, you're doing it. And I'm like, okay, I'll do my best. And I had a translator in my cabin, but sometimes I get stuck in my head about I can't help people if I can't talk to them. If I can't talk to a refugee, if I can't talk to an Estonian, I can't share Christ with them. And the girls in this top picture here, I don't know if I have a laser pointer, do I? Yes? No? Maybe? Okay, but the girls in the top picture there, they were, I think for my 3rd year at this camp, none of them spoke English. Almost a word of English. At the end of the camp, I think they said 4 words, and I was like, they spoke to me. But they knew that I loved them. And even the next year when I wasn't their counselor, they would come up, and what we would do is we would dance together. One day I was in the line, I started doing the Macarena, and they without a word, just started doing the Macarena with me. But it was just this amazing moment of bonding that was above language, that was beyond language. Here is David. He's one of the young men that was a camper the first year, and he was baptized recently. Last year, my co-counselor from Lithuania was baptized at the camp, which was just amazing. Her friends brought her. She had been living with them, going to church with them, and then she decided to give her life to Christ. During COVID, so when this camp started, it was entirely run and done by Americans. But because of COVID, the kids were challenged to form a committee to plan their own camp. And they did almost all of the planning themselves for the first time. They were the majority of the staff because there were just a few of us, because we were already in Estonia, that could be there. And so to see these young people to step up and take responsibility for their camp as really the experts of this camp was just a huge growth to see. So there's different types of growth. I was just looking at these last night. One generation shall commend your works to another and shall receive your mighty acts. Therefore, as you receive Christ Jesus as Lord, so walk in him, rooted and built up in him, established in the faith, just as you were taught, abounding in thanksgiving. And I was looking at these and I thought this is the perfect way to describe the two ways that I view this particular ministry. On one side, I am constantly praying not only for the people that I'm sharing Jesus with, but for their kids. That generationally, my teammate Randall and I, you'll see him in a minute, we've talked a lot about, not only do we want to see these people, but we want to see their kids and their grandkids become eventually the church leaders in Estonia. But then for those who are already Christians or already believers, to help them become rooted, to help them grow their roots, to help them get to the point where they're ready to bear their own seeds. And so this is kind of the two-sided coin there. So when we first got there, I don't even have a picture of when I first got there. I couldn't find it. So this is actually 6 months after I was there. But the first Sunday I was there, it was 3 people meeting on the 8th floor of a Soviet building. And they were angry with each other. They were sad. There was just a lot of pent-up, frustration, I think. And I got in there and I was like, Lord, what did I get myself into? I don't know if I can do this. It wasn't about me doing it. I had to let him and get out of his way, honestly. So that was me, and then the guy with the big beard is my teammate, Randall. This couple, Astrid and Ian, she was baptized 2 months after I got there. We studied together. She became a Christian. We've been studying the Bible together ever since. Pile is one of the original and older members of that congregation, and now she has 3 beautiful daughters, you'll see later. Rena is married to Dennis, who was there before us. And so this was our church, and this is actually my apartment here. So I live in the middle of downtown, so it's a better location. And so, yeah, we're small, but just to help Astrid grow in her faith, Randall was mentoring Ian, Dennis was mentoring Ian, to encourage Pile. So this was, before COVID. And then Toby would come visit us from Tallinn. He's from Nigeria, but he would come visit us to preach, to encourage our congregation. And you'll see later some of the other African members that have just been a huge encouragement because they're English speaking. And so they'll come help us and do events with us. So I was laughing at myself when I called this ground up because I realized you can take that a couple different ways. From the ground up, a couple of different things. So when I was thinking about what have been some of the more important stages, and starting from almost nothing. So we had 3 people. There were no outreaches in the city that we lived. They would go to Tallinn to help with their camp, which is the one that you saw, but that's 2.5 hours away. In Tartu, there was really nothing going on. They were going to someone else's game night. They were having church on Sunday, and that was it. I didn't know anybody. And the teammate who did know people decided not to come with us. And so I knew people who knew people who knew people, but I had to start somewhere. And for people who are thinking about doing this or might someday start from almost nothing, there's some things here that I just put as notes, that finding common ground with people. Some of the people who helped me the most when I first got to Estonia weren't Christians. But they were people that were like, wow, you're American and you're here and I don't believe what you believe, but you're trying to help people, and I respect that. So if you need me to translate for your doctor's appointment, help you with your residency, I'm going to help you. But now they're some of our greatest friends, and at the beginning they were like, hey, could you not bring up Jesus unless I ask? Because it makes me really uncomfortable. I'd have someone over for dinner, and I'd say, do you mind if I pray? And they'd say, do you mind if I don't? And so there was kind of this, but finding common ground, whether that be watercolor, music, volunteer work, whatever it is, meeting people where they're at. There's several other groups that will meet in specific points in the city to meet with you and find you and try to have a conversation. But what I've been up to, and you'll see some pictures in a minute, is just going where people are, going things I'm genuinely interested, and then paying attention to what God's doing, looking for the weird, as one of my mentors always says, looking for the opportunities. I don't have to force it, that I can just look for the people that God is putting in my path who are seeking Him. A daily grind. I had to make a job for myself. I wasn't coming into a congregation that, hey, we have all these ministries, but we don't have enough hands. It was, I hope you can find ways to serve God here. And so finding ways to serve, starting with other organizations, starting with pre-existing faith-based groups, because it's what I had access to. Finding people who had been brought to Christ through Church of Christ missionaries, but no longer attended, but they would help me because of the special relationship they had with people who came before me. Sometimes feeling ground up, sometimes being very deeply misunderstood, being accused of being brainwashed, asked if I left my swords at home. There were many comments like this, and I've learned not to take it personally, but it was hard at first. And I've learned that God isn't afraid of small seeds or slow starts. Someone made this joke yesterday, I have a mustard seed and I'm not afraid to use it. I remember the first time I planted seeds in the garden, it was the picture on the cover page. It took 3 or 4 weeks for those seeds to germinate. And I was starting to worry, are they ever going to sprout? Are they ever going to come up? Because all I'm looking at is a bunch of dirt. And I realized God knows the growth that's coming. I might only see a bunch of dirt in my field. We're a lot of dirt. But He knows. He knows what He's doing, and He knows what's next. And I had to be patient and wait for those seeds to germinate. So when I first got there, I was part of other things. So it's called Agape Kovik. It's Crusades for Christ in Europe. And I was volunteer there, leading game nights, cooking for their events, befriending the volunteers. Most of my good friends were volunteers in this organization, volunteering at a community garden, helping to build things. And I got all kinds of questions, like, wait, you're here for what? And so tell me this. And well, I've always wanted to ask that. I've never had a Christian to ask this question to. That's my favorite one. It's like, oh boy, okay, let's talk. Or, wow, you're a Christian, but you're actually really nice. Yeah. Some of the volunteers at this organization were surprised by that. But it opened up the door for them to be more open to hearing. Something that someone was talking about receptivity, and I was trying to explain that in countries that already have a positive view of Christianity and a positive view of Jesus, receptivity is just a few steps this way, and it's like, okay, I'm ready to give my life to Him. But in a country where it's like, okay, so I understand 80% of Americans identify as Christian, but why? Why is this a good thing? Why is this something other than something that's just started wars? They don't understand. And so to help them, their receptivity is sometimes the shift from, hey, don't talk about that, to every time they meet with us, they're asking questions. They're curious. They know. They say, I understand the value. I may not be able to believe it yet, but they're getting there. So it's a bit of a longer journey for them. They're not starting from a positive view or a general understanding of the Bible. Some girl I'm in orchestra with, I told her I studied the Bible, and she went, well, what religion is that? She didn't know. So here's where some of the starting things. Some of the girls. So this redhead up here was a volunteer at Agape Kovik, and she started out, the first night I met her, we talked for 3 hours. You're American, tell me about guns. And she had all kinds of questions for me. And so then we got into a conversation about morality and how do you know what's right and wrong and how do you know? And then, we're still friends to this day. And then she introduced me to her younger sister and her friend. And she's like, tell us about Jesus. We want to know. And I said, if you want to know, we could go to the source of this information. Do you want to do a book club on the Gospel of Luke? We'll read it together, discuss, have conversation questions. And so we did that online during COVID. The girl at the bottom there, she is from Germany. I also met her at this place. She came for a game night, and she came for kind of an introduction to Christianity course. And we ended up studying the Bible together for 9 months. She was only in Estonia for 9 months, but I met her at the beginning. She was a huge help to me with the technology set up and recording things during COVID. And we studied together. And when she left, she said, I'm not ready to completely commit my life to Christ, but I know what to do when I am. Helping people just get closer to God. So after we moved out of my apartment, we went into this place. So this picture here is the place where we had the game nights and different events and things. And we started actually meeting there on Sunday. And so when we would meet people on Friday night at the game night, we'd say, hey, on Sunday we're going to have this. If you want to come, experience church maybe for the first time or experience Christianity and see what that's like, realize that it's not as strange as you might think, you're welcome to come. And as we started to do more things and started to do more events, then Christian Thompson and I put together this logo. I gave him sketches and he designed this for us so that we could start advertising events with our logo, which is how you do things in Estonia. So Pila and her 2 daughters, now she has 3, but starting with the one person I knew that was an Estonian Christian, who had been a Christian for a while, and asking her advice and asking her, what are some ministries to start? What are some good things to do? How can I represent Jesus to these people? And also just encourage her, as someone who's been through a lot, as missionaries have come and gone in the past, and the church has risen and fallen over time, to build a relationship with her and her kids. So as we continued to grow, we started having cultural events. We had our first Let's Start Talking program. We were actually the team ourselves because of COVID. We had an intern, Maria Laura, come join us. I met, who is now one of my good friends, Daniel, up here. And then I met Bella, who was one of my Let's Start Talking students in the second summer I was in Estonia. And so we were starting to pick up, starting to get momentum, starting to meet more people. These events brought in lots of people. Daniel, in the top picture in my apartment, we had a lunch. He was coming. He was the president of the African Student Association in Estonia. And he came to do an African culture party in Tartu. And we had met at church. We had become friends. And I said, hey, he had said, Estonians, they don't understand hospitality. They don't invite you into their home. What's up with that? I said, I know. I said, but I tell you what, brother, if you ever come to Tartu, I'll have you over to my home. So that's that. But then the next year, he came back and we had our own African culture party. And he helped make the food, and there were several people there making the food and decorating. And then they did presentations on their own country, sharing about their culture, sharing about where they had come from. And Bella here is from Taiwan. Now, Bella you'll see in some other pictures because she left for 1.5 years to go work on her master's degree. She came back to write her thesis, and she remembered me. And she said, hey, I'm coming back. I want to meet with you. When does your church meet? When do you have your Bible studies? I really want to. When I had met her, she was just starting. I mean, she had just started reading the Bible, had just started considering God in her life, and now she's studying about getting baptized 2 years later, and so I praise God for that. We moved places a year later again. There was another group that wanted to meet at the coffee shop that was local, and so because they were local, they asked us to move our time, and so we found this place. Now, the owner of this place was an LST student of Speedy Heart 20 years ago. Met her when she was 16. And she always, they always visit her when they come back. She usually helps them find, she has several apartments, several businesses. She's just an entrepreneur. And so we were meeting here, and this was our second Thanksgiving meal. I always make pumpkin pie. They don't have pie as we know it in Estonia. And so it's just one of those things that they're like, wow, this is so different, and we like it even though this is a vegetable. So... so that's some of the things. And then here again you see Randall, but you also see one Estonian man he's been discipling for the last several years. And Toby was again visiting us. This was within the last 1.5 years, these 2 pictures. The families from Africa that go to the church in the capital city, they came down and they helped us do this Christmas event. So I planned this Christmas party, and then we did this singing. It was my teammate Dennis's idea, but he was in the States at the time, and so I was compiling the songs. Daniel is a very gifted song leader, And so we had a Christmas party, we had a meal together, and then we have like a medieval-style town square that used to be the market square. And we went out there and we sang Christmas carols in English and Estonian there on a Sunday afternoon. And so we recorded it on YouTube, posted it, shared it with people. And what was amazing is one of the girls up here is actually Ukrainian. Now, this was far before any of the stuff you guys have heard about. This was back in, I think, 19, 20, somewhere back there. I don't remember, but it was a few years ago. And we had started to the Let's Start Talking program. We were classmates together in Estonian classes, which is also a really great way to meet people. And she said, I want you to teach me English. And I said, well, I do free English lessons, but it's from the Bible. Are you okay if it's from the Bible? And she said yes. But then we met in person, and she looked at it, and she goes, I'm sorry, but I can't. I can't read this. I can't look at it. But even after that, she still came and sang Christmas carols with us. And so she wasn't ready for that, but she still sang these Christmas songs, and she still got to be around us. And I think for a lot of people that we do events with, especially as you saw on this last slide, what I didn't mention about this meal is that a lot of the people there are not, they're not members of our church. We had a meal after our service, and we invite our friends. And part of the reason why we do that is because a lot of the people that I know, I may be the only Christian that they know. And they don't understand, okay, what are these Christian people like? Is she the only one that's like this? Are there others like her? Like, she's okay, but I'm not so sure. And so part of this is to let my friends, my Estonian tutor, the girl that overheard us speaking the Bible in English at the cafe and was like, I like reading the Bible in English, to a friend of mine who I volunteer at the community garden with, and then the two guys. And so they come and they get to meet and they get to see. And they get to start conversations not only with me, but with other members of the church. Okay, yeah, and then that's my niece up there, Nora. She calls me auntie. She's turning 4 next month. Just an aside. Okay, so when I started, it was just me and Astrid studying together. And our group has continued to grow. So up here, this was Valentine's Day of last year. We had to cancel. We were going to have this big party because it's also my teammate and his wife's anniversary. And so I was planning this big party to celebrate Valentine's Day and their anniversary, and then both of my guy teammates got COVID. So us ladies, we had a little Valentine's Day party. We had a little study together, and that group has grown from 1 and then 3, and then now there's 4 of us. 5 of us, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us that study together every week. And so that has continued to grow as Bella has come, as Rena has come. We went from going to someone else's board game nights to having our own. And so now we are, we don't have to worry about maybe what someone else would like to do or teach, but we can come together with our friends and start conversations naturally about Jesus. This lady up here, the blonde that you see standing next to me in the sunshine there, her name is Kate. We also met at this organization, but we've become good friends since then, and she has invited me multiple times to be a guest speaker in her school. She teaches high school English, and she said, would you just talk about America? Would you talk about your high school experience? Would you talk about why you're here? And it's a public school, so I don't go in teaching Bible, but what I do say is, when I went to university, I studied a book that covered the span of several thousand years. It has ancient songs, it has the ancient laws, the histories of kings, and in the new part of the book, it talks about a community that can love each other and others because of the death and life of one man. What is this book? Someone always gets it right, but then you can visibly see the paradigm shift. In one 3rd grade class I spoke in a village outside of Tartu, one 3rd grader piped up, "It's the Bible!" And the rest said, no way. And I said, that's right, it's the Bible. And so it's a small seed, but it's something that they get to see the Bible in a different way. It's not just a dusty old book, but there's so much more to it than maybe they realize. We got to have our Let's Start Talking program as well, and the team that came for that from California, they were a huge help in donating things for Ukraine. You'll hear about that next hour, but not only did they come help with language, but they came and helped with our VBS, they came and helped with Ukrainian aid, and so that was a huge blessing. Our first VBS, so my teammate Randall did not grow up going to any kind of children's Bible-related events. And so all of this is new to him. The camps, the VBSs, the stuff, this is all new to him. And he takes it in stride. He's amazing at it. And then Dennis, usually his wife and his daughters did a lot of it. And so I help kind of plan and organize, and then they teach and they do songs and they do stuff. And so, but I do a lot of the organizing for that. This was our first year, and this was, we had helped with another Estonian camp. I didn't mention that. Sorry, that's a lot of information. One of the young ladies who came to Christ through a Church of Christ missionary that came before me was the director of an outreach camp called From Friend to Friend is the organization, and it's called We Are Kind Together, or Kindness Camp. The children are chosen by social workers for one reason or another, and they are sponsored to come to this camp where they get to hear about Jesus in their own language. I get to be a craft instructor. What's amazing about that is instead of hyper-focusing on a few kids and making sure that they're okay and getting where they need to go, I get to float, and I get to find those who are comfortable speaking to me, those who want to know me, those that want to speak English, or those that are just excited to hear an American speak Estonian. So 2 of these girls were ones that came up, and they talked to me, and they talked to Randall, and we said, hey, we're going to do a camp. Do you want to come? And so they came, and you'll see the next pictures, but now they're old enough, they're going to be helping to plan the next one. So this is in our own city, and this was the first children's outreach program we had in Tartu, and since 2014, the last time they had young friends come. So you have Pile's girls and these girls from the camp, and then I met one guy in the park. He recognized my picture from Facebook. He said, hey, are you that missionary? And I said, I guess so, and we talked in the park, and then his young girls came. Then you see how much it's grown. So this is just the next year. We had 20 registered, 17 that were able to come if you got sick. We had several children from this other camp. The director gave me all of the parents' email addresses of those who lived in our city. And then a lot of the other kids were my Estonian language course classmates' children. And so we had a bilingual VBS. It was in Estonian, it was in English. We had translators who were not Christians, but they wanted to help. And so they got to hear and translate all of the lessons, which we like a lot. We had 2 boys from Latvia, we had a girl from Bangladesh, a girl from Taiwan, a girl whose parents are from Russia, all in this camp. And it was just amazing. And as soon as we finished, they're like, when's the next one? And I was like, next year? And so people ask me, how can we help? How can we help in Estonia? I'm like, hey, if you want to come, I will plan an event around you. Tell me what you like to do. I will organize things because I know that these children would do as many things as was available for them. And then these are the 2. So these 2 are now over 13, and they came and they helped at the camp, and they were put in charge of the water balloons. And they passed the test, and they came up to me afterwards, and they said, Hope, you trusted us with responsibility. They loved it. They loved it that I trusted them, that I didn't, micromanage. I didn't try to control what they were doing, and they didn't, throw all of them at each other. So that was great. And I said, yep, you passed the test. And they said, we'd like to help plan for next year's. We'd like to be on the staff next year. And so that's what we'll be doing when I get back in February, March. So at the beginning, we had just a few Let's Start Talking programs, but then I took on regular students. So you'll see in the top 2 corners, these are 2 of my regular students. One girl, we'll just call her Karen, she was a lady I babysat with. I met her at a ladies' retreat. She said, what kind of mission work do you do? I said, I don't know yet. She said, well, do you babysit? I said, sure. So I used to babysit all 4 of her kids, and very often her baby. And in Estonia, you don't sit with babies, you walk with them outside. So I would walk outside with her baby for an hour while she worked. The other one is the son of one of my Estonian teachers. She said, you're American, would you tutor my son in English? He wants to get C1 level, which is like very high level English. And I'd love to have him practice with an English speaker. And I said, okay, well, I charge, if I teach from the Bible, it's free. And if it's not from the Bible, then it's $10 an hour. I'm certified to teach English as a foreign language. And she's like, oh, Bible's fine. Bible's fine. And so we've been reading through the Gospel of Luke together. This is a picture on the bottom where we've had a dinner right before I left. I've been traveling since December 18th, and that was the last meal I had with those lovely people. And then on the other corner, so I've been traveling, and I went to Lithuania. So this last summer, I had an opportunity to go to the Baltic Family Camp for the first time, where I met some really amazing people, including Joel Petty, who's been active in Russia forever. and some other really key members in Europe, and get to meet other missionaries who I've got to since go back and visit some of them. I got to visit some missionaries in Greece. I got to visit this minister and his wife in Lithuania. And it's because I want to know what's working in other European countries. How are people who have been doing this a lot longer than me? What is the secret of their longevity? Whether they're foreigners, whether they're locals, kind of what are they doing? But also, how can I help? Right? Because there's a lot of women. And in Estonia, where we live, locals were not trained and mature enough to lead the church themselves. That's why we're there, right? And we hope to help with that as much as God will allow us. But here you have locals, but it may be that only the husband is trained. Or it may be that they studied, but they have never really gotten this ministry type training. And so this beautiful lady, we'll just call her Z, she asked me to come, and she said, you have this training. I think you're a good teacher. I think you're a good speaker. Would you consider coming to Lithuania? And I said, no, I'm staying in Estonia, but here's what I can do. I can come and I can help. I can teach some ladies' classes. Maybe we can put together a retreat. I can help you, because I was telling her about the things I was doing in Estonia. And she's like, how do you choose your ministries? How do you start them? And I said, I just meet people and see what they like and go from there. It's not difficult, but if you're not used to it, it's very new and it's kind of scary. And she said, in our church, women would be happy to serve, but they don't know how to start. And I said, well, that's what I've been learning. So I'm happy to come and share that. And so this is the ladies group I did a devotional with in Lithuania. I was traveling through the night, and I woke up, and she said, hey, would you maybe consider doing a devotional? So, and then there you also have a lady who works in Belarus. Now, in Belarus, it is actually illegal to be a missionary. So she is an English teacher, but she was there. So I did the ladies, she did the youth devotional. We got to talk and, kind of exchange notes, and then she went back to where she teaches English. And this picture at the top, this is the minister in Vilnius, and there's a woman that had been attending their church for a while. She's originally from Iraq, but she had been in Malaysia. She had worked in the movie business. She'd been coming, and she really felt God's call on her life as she continued to hear the scripture. And it was amazing to witness. So English is his third language. He speaks Lithuanian, Russian, English. And English is also her, I think, third language. She speaks Farsi and probably Malaysian and English and maybe even more. I was just his hype man in the sense that, he would say something and he'd look at me like, is that the right word in English? Or what's that word in English? And I would just, help. But he was sharing the gospel to this woman in his third language, to someone else. But she got it. And she was ready to give her life to Christ. And so to see that was so powerful for me. And I had almost nothing to do with that, but there's a baptism. And to be a witness to that and the way that God brings people from all over the globe to meet each other and to bring them closer to Him is just... Before I left here, I used to say, I'm going to get a front row seat to see what God's doing. And in times of difficulty, I was like, God, I don't know what you're doing. But now when I put these pictures up there and I look back and I see the journey not so close, but from this perspective, I see, wow, He was doing a lot of stuff. So I'm learning. Every part of the journey, every part of the growth process is important. When I came back from my AIM field, we go through something called re-entry. And one of the things that they said that will always stick with me is that God is happy with the person who got saved on your mission field, the person who came closer to Him, even if the only person who got saved or closer to Him was you. That's enough, that He loves us enough that if we're the only ones, that it's worth it. And yet, I will never know this side of heaven what will, all of these people, some people studying with them, and they go off to other countries, many people actually. They come from Nigeria, they move to, some other country, they come from the Philippines and move to France, and I'm just a part of their journey. I'm just watering, I'm just planting a seed, and someone else down the road is going to continue to help, water and those things. And it's really grown my trust, and that God is working even when I don't get to see the whole growth process. And that if I'm trusting in Him, if I'm looking to what He's doing, that I believe that in His mind that's success. And so this has been a little bit about Estonia. Now we have all these programs going on. On this trip, I've been, trying to recruit people. I I was in a small church in Texas, and I said, I wish I could just take this whole church and move it to Estonia, and you could just come and be the light of Jesus there. And I can't do that. But for those who do want to come, who want to visit for 2-3 weeks, help with the program, have something organized around whatever your skill set and desire is, I mean, we're open to that. We're, of course, looking for new members of our team. My oldest teammate is 75. He'd like to retire at some point. He's, he's 75 and living overseas doing mission work. I respect it, right? He's like, hey, when you're at the workshop, could you recruit people? Because I'd like to retire. Some young men could come to Estonia. And so that's what we're up to. God has blessed us with a new meeting space that we're not only renting on Sundays, but every day of the week. And with that, that opens us up to do even more things. We are right in the middle of downtown, right across the biggest crosswalk, right next to one of the biggest shopping centers. We have a ground floor, separate entrance with a kitchenette, open worship area, separate classroom / potential guest room for visitors. And we're very excited. It's been a long time in coming. With COVID and everything, it's been, things have been slowed down. Lots of things have been unexpected. Lots of changes have been unexpected. But as we just continue to walk forward and look for the opportunities that come with me, with my team, we're excited to see what God does next. And so that's been just starting from really just a seed in Estonia. Not just the ministry, not just people growing in their faith, but the ministry itself. Starting from a seed. Starting over in a lot of ways. That it used to be very big and flourishing, but over time, and so starting over again with the few people that were familiar and willing to help with that. And so I praise God for that. It's a very different mission field. It's a very different mission field, but they deserve to hear the gospel and to have a chance to accept and reject it, especially when so many know almost nothing about God. And so I'm very blessed to be there. I'm very thankful to share with you all this morning. If you have private questions, I'll take those later. But if you have some general questions, I think we have a few minutes. If I miss something, or I do that. I skip over big details. So, do you have any general questions you'd like to ask?
I know you had to somehow make a language barrier. That seems to me that would have been the hardest barrier to eventually be able to speak and share, because you have to have words.
Yes. It is a barrier. So in America, we have to earn the right to be heard, right? We can say a lot, but maybe it's not heard. In Estonia, my experience was you have to earn the right to be talked to, especially in English. People don't know you. If they're not comfortable with you, they might know English, but they will not talk to you until they feel safe enough, comfortable enough to talk to you. In America, you meet someone and they ask you 20 questions. Where are you from? What's your family, your siblings, your parents, everything. They ask you all this information. Estonians will not. They'll just watch you. They might ask you a question or two, but they don't dig. They don't ask you, maybe because they don't want to share their personal life, so they don't ask about yours. And so it's a lot slower. A lot of Estonians do speak English. So young Estonians actually have to pass not fluency exam, but you have to be able to adequately understand, speak, read, write English to graduate from high school in Estonia. They have the ISEX, if you're familiar with the testing. It was a barrier. The hardest thing for me is when you're in a room full of people and they forget, they're not even being rude, they forget that you don't know what they're saying. They're all laughing at a joke and you're the only one that doesn't know what it is. That was the hardest thing for me. At the camps with Russian, that was also difficult. Things were translated. The hardest part was with the kids outside of the main hall where we had translators. That was a bit of a challenge, but at the same time, you grow together, you learn together, and they tried to put at least one translator in each cabin. The girl who was a very selective 16-year-old translator grew a lot, and when I had her again as a co-counselor, she was just amazing. So at the beginning, she's like, oh, what can I get away with, But then towards a few years later, we've become such good friends, and she's such an amazing translator. So you learn to depend on translators. You learn to speak the little that you do know to show that you love and respect the people that are there. I know 30 words in Russian, but I use all of them. So the camps in Tallinn and the church in Tallinn are Russian-speaking. You'll find more about that in the next session and how they've been able to help Russian-speaking Ukrainians. Where I live in what they call South Estonia is very, very Estonian-speaking, and they're very strict about Estonian. There are places that I go, I am only allowed there if I only exclusively speak Estonian and if I don't allow people to translate for me. They're not mean. They want me to grow. They want me to learn. They have their own language. I'm sorry.
No, I wasn't sure about that. I may have missed it, but I did not know there was a language, Estonian language.
Yes, I glazed over a big detail. Yeah, so Estonia has its own language, guys. It is from the Finno-Ugric branch of the language tree, if you're a linguist. It is closer to Finnish and Hungarian, which are not very familiar languages in this part of the world. It has 14 cases, no future tense, no gender, no articles, verb conjugation like Spanish. It's a very difficult language. It took me, I thought I could learn it as quickly as some learn Spanish, but it is a much more difficult language to learn. I have some level in Estonian, and it has been difficult, but it's mostly for Estonians to know that you're invested in them so that they feel safe investing back in you. That's why I learned the language. That's why I learned, and for the kids. I love practicing Estonian with kids. If someone speaks English, they don't usually have the patience for my Estonian. But kids who are still learning, they're just so excited to see an adult have the same problems they have, and it makes us good friends. Yeah, so yes, Estonian.
My best friend is Romanian. How different is that language versus Ukrainian?
I couldn't tell you. I do know one Romanian who lives in Estonia. I can tell you that he almost exclusively speaks English to Estonians. So I don't think it's close enough that you can...
My best friend speaks Romanian all the time. I can't try to even try to speak it. They're kind of more aggressive. You know, they're well, not aggressive, but when they speak it, it sounds more gruff, I guess.
Mm-hmm. It's a harsher language, yeah. The first time I heard someone get chewed out in Russian at the camp, I was scared.
Yeah.
I didn't know what they were saying, but I was like,
Yelling, but they're not. Yeah.
no, they're not. It's just a language, same with some others. I know 30 words. You'll find out in the next session my experiences about that. Mm-hmm. I've had lots of fun times. Usually me going, "Nami znаю ruski," and then running to the next person that knows Russian. Yeah.
You shared some American holidays with them. What about their traditions and holidays today?
Yeah, they have some fun ones. They have traditions that predate Halloween called, what's in English? Like Mark's Day and Catherine's Day. One day they dress in black, and the thing about their holidays, when children get gifts or candy, so like our Halloween and Christmas, their versions of that, they have to perform to receive their gifts. They don't just get things. They have to do a dance, a poem, a song. One kid does martial arts. They have to do something to get their gifts for their kind of like Halloween. Although now they do celebrate Halloween because their second holiday is at the end of November, and it's just warmer in October. So they prefer to go out October 31st than November 20-something. Yeah. So during the Soviet times, they didn't celebrate Christmas. It was not celebrated. They only celebrated New Year, and usually on January 6th, 5th or 6th. So Christmas is a new thing. In Estonia, they celebrate Christmas on New Year's Eve. They go to the church. Sometimes they light candles in graveyards to honor their loved ones. They do all of their celebration on Christmas Eve. So the 24th is their Christmas Day. And a lot of Europe, the 24th is their Christmas Day. But that's new. That's only within the last generation that they've been allowed to celebrate Christmas. And so it's a pretty big deal in Estonia, but they celebrate it a little differently than we do.
What's the temperature like? Is it cold or?
Well, growing up in the Midwest, I don't think it's that cold. But that's because I grew up with wind chills 30 below, 20 below, 10 below. We only didn't have recess. Usually if the wind chill was below zero. So my perception of cold is a little bit different. The dark is the hardest part. So it's as far north as Juneau, Alaska. That's why I'm here in January, because it's very difficult, and having 2 Januaries of lockdown. It's not as cold, but it only gets up to 95 in the summer, but there's no air conditioning in most people's homes. So when it's hot, it's hot. Only the movie theaters and the grocery stores have air conditioning. Most of the year, I would say it's about, in Fahrenheit, 60 degrees and cloudy, rainy, sometimes misty. It's like a very soft shower in your face. My teammate has a beard, and I laugh every time when he goes, because it just collects on your face and everywhere. So it rains probably 200 days out of the year in Estonia. In the winter time, it freezes, like it's been this last week, where it snows, it melts, it freezes, it rains, it melts, it freezes. There's lots of slush in the winter time. But yeah, in the summer it can be nice. Sometimes it can get warm and sunny. Yeah, okay. I have some questions in the back here. Yes?
We can give them
Okay,
a
sure.
during break.
All right, yes, the time.
Yes.
Thank you so much.